If we are still single a year from now, I will marry you. What seemed to be just an innocent promise between two adults who shared their frustrations and disappointments was about to transform their destinies. Over the following year, a series of unexpected events would put this promise to the test, leading them to an exciting and completely unexpected ending. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange that were reflected in the calm waters of the bay. Ethan Collins watched the scene from his luxurious suite in the most expensive hotel in the small coastal town, a glass of whiskey in hand and a thoughtful expression on his face. At 35, the millionaire heir to a business empire had achieved everything money could buy, yet he felt an inexplicable emptiness in his chest. Ethan was a man of striking presence, tall, with broad shoulders and penetrating eyes. His dark brown hair, always impeccably combed, was beginning to show some grey strands at the temples, giving him an even more sophisticated look. He dressed in tailor-made suits from the best brands, but that night he opted for a simple white shirt and linen pants, an attempt to blend into the town's more laid-back atmosphere. Sighing, he placed the glass on the small table and walked over to the balcony. The salty sea air filled his lungs, bringing a sense of freedom he hadn't experienced in a long time. Ethan had come to that little town in search of peace and mental clarity after a series of setbacks in his personal and professional life. His last relationship had ended disastrously, with his fiancée abandoning him days before the wedding upon discovering that he had made a strict prenuptial agreement. At work, a major merger he had fought for months had failed at the last minute. All of this left him bitter and distrustful, questioning his choices and priorities. Determined to clear his mind, Ethan went down to the hotel lobby and set out to walk through the cobblestone streets of the historic city. The colourful little houses and charming shops created a welcoming atmosphere, so different from the cold skyscrapers he was used to. The video will be back shortly. In the meantime, we kindly ask you to consider giving a like, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment. The video is back. Without realising it, his steps led him to a little square by the sea, where a small rustic-looking cafe caught his attention. A weathered wooden sign announced, "The Lighthouse Cafe." Drawn by the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft sound of jazz music coming from inside, Ethan decided to enter. The ambience was cosy, with wooden tables, lamps that mimicked old lanterns, and shelves filled with books. Some people were conversing in low voices, creating a peaceful and intimate atmosphere. It was then that he saw her for the first time. Lena was behind the counter, serving a cup of coffee to an elderly customer with a warm smile. She had long, wavy brown hair tied back in a casual ponytail, honey-coloured eyes that seemed to shine with their own light, and a face sprinkled with freckles. She was wearing a light blue apron over a simple white t-shirt and jeans, but there was something about her presence that immediately captivated Ethan. Lena noticed the new customer and approached with a notepad in hand. "Good evening. Welcome to the lighthouse. What can I get for you?" Her voice was melodious and calm, like the sea itself that could be heard in the background. Ethan, caught off guard by the genuine warmth in her eyes, stammered for a moment before placing his order. An espresso, please. And maybe... Could you recommend something for me to eat?" Lena's smile widened. "Of course. Our apple pie just came out of the oven. It's the house specialty." "Sounds great," Ethan agreed, feeling oddly relaxed. While Lena prepared his order, Ethan watched her discreetly. There was a natural grace in her movements, a kindness in the way she interacted with the other customers. When she returned with the coffee and pie, he couldn't help but notice the sparkle in her eyes when she talked about the coffee. "I hope you like it. The coffee is from a local farm owned by a friend of mine. It has chocolate notes and a hint of caramel," she explained with evident passion. Intrigued by her enthusiasm, Ethan asked, "You seem to know a lot about coffee. Are you the owner of the place?" Lena laughed softly. Oh no, the cafe has been owned by the Thompson family for generations. I've only worked here for a few years, but I love every minute of it. Actually, she hesitated for a moment, as if deciding whether to share something personal. My dream is to open my own business one day. A literature-themed inn where people can disconnect from the world and reconnect with inspiring stories. Her eyes sparkled as she spoke of her dream, and Ethan felt a pang of envy. How long had it been since he felt so passionate about something? In the days that followed, Ethan found himself returning to the Lighthouse Cafe with increasing frequency. Conversations with Lena became the highlight of his days. She made him laugh with funny stories about the cafe's eccentric customers, charmed him with her knowledge of literature, and surprised him with her optimistic perspective on life. Lena, in turn, found in Ethan a keen and curious listener. He asked her about her dreams, encouraging her to think big and offering advice based on his business experience. Although she didn't know his true identity as a millionaire, Ethan preferred to keep it a secret for now. She felt she had found a true friend. One evening, about a month after their first meeting, Ethan invited Lena for a walk on the beach after her shift. The moonlight bathed the sand in silver, and the rhythmic sound of the waves created an almost magical atmosphere. They walked side by side, talking about everything and nothing, until Ethan, in a moment of vulnerability, began to vent about his frustrations. Sometimes I wonder if all of this is worth it, he said, gazing at the horizon. I've spent so much time building a career, accumulating wealth, but for what? The relationships I've had always seemed empty, as if people were only interested in what I could offer, not in who I truly am. Lena looked at him with understanding. I get it. It's hard to find genuine connections these days. But I believe they exist, Ethan. Sometimes we just need to be open to them, even if they come from unexpected places. Ethan smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude for having found Lena. What about you? Have you ever thought about giving up on your dream? It must be tough saving up to open your own business while working as a waitress. Lena sighed, gently kicking the sand as she walked. Of course I've thought about giving up. Sometimes it feels like I'll never get there. I'm afraid no one will see value in my dream, that it's just a foolish fantasy. At that moment, under the moonlight and carried by the sound of the waves, something changed between them. Ethan felt a deep connection, a desire to protect and nurture the dreams of that extraordinary woman. Without thinking much, the words escaped his lips. If we're still single a year from now, I'll marry you. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Lena looked at him, surprised, before letting out a light laugh. A year can change a lot of things, Ethan. He laughed too, partly embarrassed, partly relieved by her reaction. It's true, but who knows? Maybe it's enough time for us to find out if this, he gestured between them, is real. They continued walking, the moment of tension dissolving into lighter conversation, but both felt that something fundamental had changed. A seed had been planted, a possibility neither of them dared to examine too closely, yet it filled them with silent hope. The following weeks passed in a blur of coffee shop meetings, long conversations, and walks around the city. Ethan felt revitalized, rediscovering the pleasure in the simple things in life through Lena's eyes. She, in turn, found herself dreaming bigger, inspired by his support and encouragement. But time was a relentless adversary. The month Ethan had planned to spend in the city was coming to an end, and with it, the reality of his life elsewhere began to weigh heavily. On the eve of his departure, he met Lena at the cafe after hours. The air between them was charged with unspoken emotions. Lena nervously played with a napkin, avoiding Ethan's gaze. So, tomorrow you're leaving? Ethan nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. Yes, I have responsibilities that I can no longer postpone. I understand, Lena said with a sad smile. It was wonderful to meet you, Ethan. I hope you find what you're looking for. He reached out, lightly touching her hand over the table. "Lena, He hesitated, the words stuck in his throat. How could he explain that she had changed his life in just 1 month? How could he say that the idea of returning to his old routine left him feeling empty? "I will not forget you." Lena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Ethan, don't make promises you can't keep and—" "No," he gently interrupted her. "Don't say anything more. I know it sounds crazy, but there's something special here, something worth remembering." They said their goodbyes with a tight hug. When Ethan got into his car the next day, taking one last look at the Lighthouse Cafe in the rearview mirror, he made a silent promise to himself that he would return. The months that followed were a test of patience and determination for both of them. Ethan dove back into his busy life of meetings, business trips and social events. But something had changed. He found himself thinking of Lena in the most unexpected moments. During a tedious meeting, he imagined what she would say to make him laugh. At fancy dinners, he missed the welcoming simplicity of the Lighthouse Cafe. Lena, on her part, continued her routine at the cafe, but with a new fire fueling her dreams. The conversations with Ethan had inspired her to start concretely planning her inn. In her spare time, she researched business plans, studied management, and even began looking for possible locations. They exchanged sporadic messages, sharing their daily lives, frustrations, and small victories. But as time went by, the distance began to take its toll. The messages became less frequent. Real life, with all its demands and distractions, seemed determined to drive them apart. Ethan faced increasing pressure from his family and partners to settle down. His mother, a well-intentioned but meddlesome socialite, was determined to find the perfect daughter-in-law. She organised dinners and events, always with some young heiress or model as the guest of honour. At one of these dinners, Ethan met Sophia, a beautiful and sophisticated executive in the fashion industry. She was intelligent, ambitious, and moved in the same social circles as he did. For a brief moment, Ethan wondered if he should give a chance to this relationship that made so much sense on paper. But then, in the middle of a candlelit dinner at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, Ethan found himself thinking about how Lena would have laughed at the pretentious names of the dishes. The thought made him smile, and at that moment he knew his heart had made its choice a long time ago. Lena also faced her own battles. Working at the cafe was rewarding but exhausting. Her parents, worried about her fixation on a dream that seemed distant, pressured her to consider a more stable career. It was during this time that she met Alex, a literature teacher at the local school. He was kind, shared her love for books, and supported her dreams. For a few weeks, Lena allowed herself to imagine a future with him. It was safe, comfortable, it made sense. But every time Alex invited her out, Lena felt an inexplicable hesitation. On a starry night, walking along the same beach where she had made that half-crazy promise with Ethan, Lena admitted to herself that her heart still beat for a certain mysterious man who had entered her life like a hurricane and left, leaving behind a trail of longing and possibilities. Time continued its relentless course. The seasons changed, bringing with them new challenges and opportunities. Ethan found himself increasingly involved in a corporate social responsibility project at his company, inspired by conversations with Lena about making a difference in the world. Lena, in turn, finally mustered the courage to present her business plan to a local bank, taking the first concrete steps towards her dream. And then, almost without them noticing, a year had passed. Ethan looked at the calendar in his office, his heart racing as he realised the date. It had been exactly a year since that night on the beach. Without a second thought, he cancelled all his appointments for the following week and booked a ticket to the small coastal town. The flight seemed endless. Ethan was nervous, anxious, filled with doubts and hopes. What if Lena had moved on? What if that magical month was nothing more than a distant memory for her? Upon arriving in town, Ethan went straight to the Lighthouse Cafe, his heart pounding irregularly. But as he approached, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Lena was on the sidewalk in front of the cafe, laughing and chatting animatedly with a tall, handsome man. The stranger had an arm around her shoulders in a protective manner, and the two seemed perfectly at ease with each other. Ethan's world seemed to crumble. He had been a fool to believe that Lena would wait for him for an entire year. Of course, she would move on, find someone who could be by her side every day, not just through sporadic messages. Determined not to interfere with her happiness, Ethan was about to turn away when he heard his name being called. Lena had seen him. "Ethan, oh my God, it's really you!" she shouted, running towards him with a radiant smile. Before he could react, Lena wrapped him in a tight hug. The familiar smell of coffee and her soft perfume overwhelmed him, bringing back all the memories and feelings he had tried to suppress during the year. "I can't believe you actually came," she said, stepping back to look him in the eyes, her hands still on his arms. Ethan smiled shyly, trying to ignore the man now approaching them. "I made a promise, didn't I?" The stranger reached Lena's side, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Lena, aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" Lena seemed to snap out of a trance, coming back to reality. "Oh, of course. Ethan, this is my brother Mark. Mark, this is Ethan, the friend I told you about." "Brother." The word echoed in Ethan's mind, bringing a wave of relief so intense that he almost laughed out loud. Mark extended his hand, smiling amicably. "Ah, so you're the famous Ethan. Lena can't stop talking about you. It's good to finally meet you." They exchanged pleasantries, and Mark, sensing the charged atmosphere between the two, made up an excuse to leave them alone. "Well, I need to pick up my daughter from school. It was a pleasure, Ethan. Lena, see you at dinner?" Lena nodded absently, her eyes never leaving Ethan's face. As Mark walked away, an expectant silence fell between them. "Well," Ethan began, suddenly feeling nervous. "Are you still single?" Lena completed, a playful smile on her lips. "Yes. And you?" Ethan couldn't help the smile that spread across his face. "Same." They looked at each other for a long moment, years of unspoken expectations, doubts and hopes passing between them in a matter of seconds. Ethan took her hands in his heart overflowing with emotion. "Lena, on that day at the beach, I made a promise half-jokingly. But the truth is, from the moment I met you, something changed in me. I spent this whole year thinking about you, comparing everyone I met to the amazing waitress who stole my heart in a small seaside town." Tears glistened in Lena's eyes as she listened, a radiant smile lighting up her face. "I did too, Ethan," she confessed. "I tried to move on, convince myself that what we had was just a fleeting moment. But nothing compared to what I felt with you. Every message, every call made me want more. And now you're here." Ethan pulled her closer, their faces inches apart. "I'm here, and I don't intend to go anywhere without you. Lena, you know, I think we have a promise to keep." At that moment, with the sun setting over the sea and the distant sound of the waves as background music, Ethan and Lena realised that the promise made a year ago had not been just words thrown to the wind. It had been the beginning of something deep and true, a commitment that found hearts in love and willing to live that love, even if it took an entire year for them to fully understand this feeling. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.